You're listening to The Route, a sports talk podcast. On Facebook.com/The Route 2 and on Twitter @the_Route2.
Welcome in to the Husker Football Podcast. Ryan Swanigan, Brent Bonfleur, and I guess maybe I should have Brent with me on the air.
Yeah.
That would be
that would be
important.
Nice.
This guy would be kind of important in joining us too to discuss Nebraska's fifth loss now of the season. Bo Pelini never reached that in his tenure. A little subtle jab there, but Devon Kleich joining us.
Wow, I feel good.
It's time now to bring in the Nebraska insider of all Nebraska insiders. The insider known as Devon Kleich.
Oh, I'm busting a move 24/7, guys. Pop, lock, and dropping. I don't need any light in my life.
I feel nice. A sugar and spice.
And so, Mr. Devon.
I feel nice.
Mr. Sugar Spice.
Yeah, that's true. Once again, Nebraska has lost. And you could throw so many things into this. They lost to Northwestern, again at Memorial Stadium. They lost wearing alternate black uniforms. They're now 0-2 in the black uniforms. And they've lost once again this season. And so my question to you is, right off the bat, sir, how do you feel?
Your subtle jab is unnecessary.
I'm sorry, Devon, but
Well,
can't you understand the frustration,
as a Nebraska fan, I can,
You gotta be kidding me!
I feel it. I feel the frustration because Nebraska fans always expect to win. I mean, you
and
expect
rightfully
to.
so.
Yeah, and Nebraska's a good program. Nebraska's always going to be a good program. And when you've had those national championships, granted, I hear people say all the time, we need to stop living in 1995, 94, and 97.
The
because
90s, basically.
because Nebraska's not that team anymore.
We're 20 years removed from
And
the
I
90s.
and I agree, we are not that team anymore because college football has evolved so much since that time.
It's
Nebraska
changed.
at that point they had the best facilities. They had the best weight room in the country. They probably had one of the best strength coaches in the country at that point in time. And no other school
had the greatest
this.
head coach.
No one had
anywhere.
this stuff. And people are like, God, I wish we had that again. But
we
don't.
do.
We do.
No, we do. We have it right now.
But we don't
Except
have
the coach.
I see, and that's where I think you're wrong. I think
Mike Riley's a great coach. I will make that very clear. Mike Riley's a great head coach. He is far more experienced than Bo Pelini, than Bill Callahan, than Frank Solich. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe that's taking a step with Frank Solich because he came from the Tom Osborne tree. Mm-hmm. But I mean, Mike Riley, my goodness,
It's not a question about the coach. It's just the players suck.
How though? There is so much talent on this team right now.
and I think what
It's
it comes down to,
unbelievable.
the coaches can implement their way of playing this game of football. They do. They want to throw the football as much as possible. They want to. At the beginning of the year, it looked like on defense they wanted to put pressure on the quarterback. They can teach these kids to do these things, but unless these players do it on the field, it's not going to happen. And I don't think you can blame it on the coaches. It comes down to the players need to know what they need to do, and that's what it is right now. These are very good coaches. These are experienced coaches in college football the entire time throughout their career. Mm-hmm. They've been really good coaches. Mm-hmm. But I think right now we kind of overestimated this talent that's on this Nebraska team. Offensive line,
we?
Mm-hmm. I think we did.
Yes.
I think
in some areas, I disagree.
Wide receiver core, very good.
Spectacular.
Yes.
Defensive
Quarterback
line
is still not that great of a position, which we all knew. Mm-hmm. It's still not that great, but he's progressed. But he still makes some decisions that just seem
Very
absolutely
questionable.
ridiculous
Yes.
to some people. And offensive line, Mike Cavanaugh, I think he's a very, very good offensive line coach.
He's doing everything he possibly can with this not as strong offensive line this year that Nebraska, it's another one of those years at Nebraska where it's a new offensive line and this is what you get.
And I think that getting more of their players and be able to bring them up and progress them the way they want to will help them in the future. So they need to get more kids in their recruiting classes up. Mm-hmm. And then I think it'll be a lot better. They're just dealing with kids that have learned from two different coaches, bringing in two different mindsets.
Right.
And I think that's what hurts not only the coaches right now, but the players, because they're like, well, we're used to learning this, and now we have to do this. Mm-hmm. And it's just been, both offensive lines were never that good. They just weren't. And
well, there was 1 year. But still.
But
the majority
overall,
of it, yeah.
They were not good. And you look at it now, and Mike Cavanaugh is doing something with this offensive line. They've progressed throughout the year. They've been pretty decent, giving Tommy time in the pocket. He just hasn't made that many good decisions. But it's a good team. We can't take that away from them. There's some talent on this team.
Yes.
We just haven't found the right mix, the right combination to get this team together to build confidence.
And I think that some of the play calling has not fit the strengths
I would agree.
of this team. When was the last time you saw Nebraska this season consistently run the option?
And I don't think you're going to ever see that. That's the thing.
But that's the problem, though. That's the problem right there. Nebraska, when you think of Nebraska football, you think of the run game. You think of the option. And we went through this before. We went through this in 2003, 2004, 2005, 06, 07, when Bill Callahan went away from the option and implemented a West Coast offense. You can't do that at Nebraska. You can't go away from what Bob Devaney has done, from what Tom Osborne has done, what a little bit of Bo Pelini and Frank Solich have done, which is they run the option. You can't break away from successful and proven successful traditional football styles, one of them being the option.
I think you can, and that's if you find players that fit their type of football.
Which is very difficult to do right now.
And it is, but they're recruiting better than most coaches I've seen coming to Nebraska in their first year.
Right.
And, I mean, we're going off of how the guys that Bo Pelini recruited. Yes, they're used to running the option. Mm-hmm. They know how to run the option. But Mike wants to get more of the throwing the ball. We never have done that very well. We can't be so one-dimensional.
The only time we did very well throwing the football was with Joe Gans.
People can stop Nebraska from running the football. Mm-hmm. I mean, the option is it's probably one of the most difficult things to stop. Mm-hmm. It really is, if you run it correctly.
Yeah.
But defenses can plan for you. If you are not going to throw the football, teams will stop you from running the football, or they'll keep you at bay. They can make you one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And teams will do that to Nebraska if they just want to run the option. They have to be able to throw the football, be able to throw the football efficiently, also mix in the run so they can do play action. And that's something Nebraska I don't think has done as an entire offense very well at all.
No, yeah.
In the last few years.
Yeah,
and that's
right.
what they're trying to do. But they do need to run the ball a lot more, I believe. If they can, I see in practice every once in a while that they do run the option. The option is put in there. But some of the play calling I see in games from Danny Langsdorff is a little iffy at times. He'll run draws at times that it just seems like, why are you running that play at that point in time? Or he'll run a read option and Tommy will keep the ball and he gets stuffed in the backfield. It's just, some of the play calling is just mind-blowing because they want to throw the football, but when we're running the ball well, they'll toss the football downfield a couple times. Or if we're throwing the football well, they might run a draw and it gets stuffed. Mm-hmm. It's just, I think Danny, he came from the New York Giants as a quarterback, so he wasn't calling plays. Mm-hmm. And he has been an offensive coordinator before. Mm-hmm. And I think that give him a little bit more time, because he's getting used to this too. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how many years he was up in New York, but he's getting back into the thick of things of calling plays along with Mike Riley, making those decisions. So if give him another year, and I think he'll be a pretty good play caller.
See, and that's I was thinking about this before we got this podcast rolling here. I think at this point, Nebraska fans and the media included, especially the media included, I think all of us just need to drop our expectations for this team for the rest of the season.
Oh yeah,
and just go with what happens.
I think they already dropped.
I would hope so, because I don't think expecting Nebraska to pull out wins in games that they should easily have or any home wins anymore. It's to that point where the entire Nebraska fan base and media corporation all need to drop their expectations. And if Nebraska loses, they lose. If they win, they win. At this point, you've got one October game left and then the rest of November. And probably it is going to end the day after Thanksgiving. This team probably is not going to do a bowl game unless they can somehow, unbelievably...
They got to rat off 3 wins of the last 4.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's possible. It's still possible.
They have Michigan State, they have Iowa, they have Rutgers and Purdue. 2 of those are losses, more than likely, unless Nebraska can play the way that we all have expected them to play, which I think, again, at this point is why I'm saying drop your expectations, because this year, as hard as it is for Husker fans and the media especially to swallow, this is not Nebraska's year. It is a rebuilding year, and it might take another year before we can actually start making expectations, because at this point, it's just not mixing perfect. It's not mixing right. The talent is there. I'm telling you. There is talent every single position. There is talent on this team. It's just not mixing well and adapting to the Mike Riley coaching staff. And that's where I think that, we just need to let go and enjoy going to Memorial Stadium, enjoy the atmosphere. If Nebraska wins, celebrate like crazy. But if they lose, move on to the next one, because at this point, Northwestern coming into this game, Nebraska had film to take a look at Clayton Thorson and figure him out and figure out what he could do, what he couldn't do, how to get to him, and how to adjust to plays where you couldn't get to him. And Nebraska didn't really do that. They did it to a certain extent. They held Northwestern to 177 passing yards. They held them to 156 rushing yards. That's phenomenal. But they couldn't pull it all together. And that, again, goes back to the fact that the talent is not adjusting to the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And that is why I think you just got to let go of this season. Brent, you've been quiet. What are you thinking here? You were there.
Well, I have
once
the
again
unpopular opinion because I'm not a born, raised
You're a Florida fan.
I know, I'm a Florida fan. I like the Huskers, don't get me wrong. But, you say they have talent everywhere. Let me ask you this. How many players on Nebraska on either side of the ball, including special teams, we'll even throw in Sam Foltz and Drew Brown, how many of them would start at Ohio State or Alabama? Armstrong.
Sam
Either
Foltz?
side of the ball?
Yeah.
On either side of the ball.
Well, let's start with the offense. Tommy Armstrong.
No.
Any of the running backs?
Probably not.
Probably not right at this point, but they could. Those guys, we have good running backs. They could.
Yeah, we got a lot of unproven guys, but
Yeah.
it's hard to.
They could.
So maybe some of those. Maybe we'll see. Wide receivers,
DeMornay Pearsonell.
because he's so athletic, he might
Brandon
be able to
Riley.
start.
I'd say Brandon Riley. I'd say
Maybe.
Jordan Westerkamp.
Think about
maybe
these.
Westerkamp.
The thing about those guys, they were not highly recruited. That's the problem.
True.
But Nebraska can usually pick those players
And develop them well.
Yeah, and that's Nebraska's thing. They do. They pick out players and develop them well. So they might not start at Ohio State,
Right.
But they are good Division I athletes.
Well, I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm saying how many of them would start at either Alabama or Ohio State. Tight ends.
No.
Maybe Seathan Carter.
No, stop.
Maybe. Because of how big he is.
No.
I would say no.
No.
All right.
Offensive linemen.
No.
Any of them?
No.
Okay, so we've got maybe 3 wide receivers. Maybe 3. More than likely 2.
2 for sure.
Because Westerkamp's got ungodly good hands, and DeMornay Pearsonell is an insane athlete.
Can we throw Sam Foltz in there? Sam Foltz would start
I
anywhere.
agree. Sam Foltz. Okay, so you got the punter.
Yeah.
you
So
got
that's
the punter.
3 on the
Drew
offensive
Brown's
side.
no. Okay, how many on defense now? Malik
man.
Collins.
I could
yes.
say
Malik.
that entire defensive line
Yes.
could potentially start.
I would agree.
Potentially.
I would say 3 of the 4 just because Jack
is,
English.
No,
but-
Jack English did not
Because
start
he had
for
to come
Alabama
into his own this year.
or Ohio State.
Yeah,
but
but
Vincent Valentine,
Greg,
absolutely.
I would say the 2 interior
Greg
defensive
McMullen
linemen.
and Malik Collins. Yeah. Okay, so we got 2, maybe
Not
3.
even Greg. I would say Vincent and
just-
Vincent
and Colin
And
Malik.
Malik.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got 2 defensive linemen.
I'd say I would include Greg, but
We got
yeah.
2. Okay, so
Maybe 2, maybe 3.
we'll say 2 just to be on the conservative side.
Okay.
Linebackers.
No.
No, none of them. None of
Michael
them will
Rose, Ivy at the
start.
biggest
No,
stretch. But,
yeah, at the
but
biggest stretch.
Nothing else.
And secondary players.
No.
None of them.
Okay, so we got like 6 players.
And you know
That
that,
would-
because
that
Jonathan
would
Rose is a
start.
transfer from Auburn.
Yeah, and
That
what,
proves that.
you got like maybe 6 players that start for Nebraska that would start for the. And the reason I say Ohio State and Alabama is because they've won most of the national championships in the past decade. You got 6 players, and one of them's the punter. You know, and 2 are defensive linemen. You don't have the talent that it takes to be a top tier program because that's the standard. I'm not saying that they're bad players. They're not. They have tons of good players, yes, and they got tons that would start at 100 of the 127 programs, yeah, and they'd probably be the best player on their roster. But they don't have the talent needed to be a top program.
And I think
it's
that's
not even close. They're not even close to that. Again, I'm not saying they're bad, but they're nowhere close to having that kind of talent across the board. Because if you ask the same question, how many starters on Ohio State's offense would start at any other program, it'd be like almost all of them. Mm-hmm. And then defense, it'd be most of them.
And that's why I like Brent, because he gets us an outsider's perspective. We like the Huskers
Exactly.
growing up. And
Of course.
And,
yeah.
and if you ask me those questions with Florida, I get the same way about Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at Nebraska, it's not hard to see that
Yeah.
they're just not. Now, you have to bring up the coaching. I think Mike Riley is going to be, if they give him 3 full seasons, I think by the 3rd season, he will have probably a undefeated team. I think, in
that's
3
like you look
seasons.
at him, his recruiting classes starting this year are looking really good because I heard it, I read it, I don't know where I read it, but they said Keyshawn Johnson would never have told his son to come to Nebraska unless Mike Riley was here.
Yeah.
That means that guy can recruit.
Yes.
That he played under Mike Riley at
Or there's
USC.
something better about Mike Riley that was not with Bo Pelini.
And exactly.
Probably another big factor right there.
And these players want to come play for Mike Riley because they know that this guy can coach. And, Nebraska, they're not used to drawing in the flashy wide receivers. Because DeMornay was not highly recruited.
No.
Westerkamp was not highly recruited.
No.
And Brendan Riley was not highly recruited. But if he can draw in those big wide receivers from California, he's a very good recruiter in California. And he will be good for Nebraska. If we can get those, those skilled positions filled with really good players, Nebraska will be unstoppable. And Trent Beret on defense has become one of the best recruiters I've seen.
Best linebacking coaches. Look at what
That's
he's
true.
done with this linebacking core.
He had to piece together the stat that came up on TV yesterday. 20 different starters on defense this season. 20 different starters.
Yeah.
And most of those are at linebacker.
And let's not forget about the injuries that the defense has faced.
Yeah. And the recruiting is going to be better than Nebraska's seen in a long time. Since the 90s. It's
would
going to
think.
be the best.
You would hope, at least.
And look at the division that they're in, the Big Ten West, right? And Ohio State and Michigan State are due for drop-offs. Now, they've got great coaches. Unless one of them leaves, that's going to really precipitate the drop-off. That's going to come fast. But, I see Michigan State going downhill pretty quickly. They're about to lose Connor Cook. If they finish the season undefeated, he will be the winningest quarterback of all time. Connor Cook?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, exactly.
Think of all the great college quarterbacks, and he's going to be the best as far as wins if they go undefeated this season.
Yeah.
But then in Wisconsin, they're not doing anything. There's really no one to challenge Nebraska in their own division. If fans can be patient enough with Mike Riley to trust that all the people who really know, all these coaches, all these high-end athletic directors and people in the management positions that make college football run, trust this guy enough to bring him in. If you cannot give him, and I think it'll be in the third year. I think you got to give him this year. I think you got to give him one more year. And in the third year, I think they could go undefeated. And that's without looking at the schedule. That's based on trust in, one of the biggest thing you just said, recruiting. I think by then he'll have that. The system will be in place. Tommy Armstrong will be gone. These players will be gone now that we're in Bo's system. And by 3 years, they will be cleaned out, except for freshmen who didn't play. And, I can't imagine any of the other teams in the Big Ten getting so much better in that same span. It may happen. And I don't know their schedule for that year, obviously. But I could see Nebraska going undefeated with the situation that they have with this coach. You just got to be patient. And I know it sucks. I went through it the past 2 years with my Florida Gators. They were absolute trash once Urban Meyer left. They were just terrible. They blocked each other. But now they brought in a new coach, and it's going faster than expected, but they're only going to get better. But in 2 years from now, oh boy, once their quarterback's got time, once that system is fully in place, I can't even imagine how good they're going to be.
And the thing that we haven't really looked at is going into next season, Nebraska doesn't lose a lot, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think all of our linebackers are still there. Every one of them that's played this year is still there, and we'll get a couple more in the recruiting class. Our entire defensive line, except for Jack Anguish, is back. Unless
that's a good thing in my opinion.
Unless Malik Collins leaves to go to the NFL, which I don't know if he will.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't think he's played well enough to go. But
not in the first round anyway. Yeah,
but he's still good.
She's got that.
And then we lose. I think we lose one person in the secondary. Maybe.
Here's
which is fine.
If you're covering defense, we lose Daniel Davey.
Oh no.
Jack Gangwish.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Joe Keels, but he's been a non-factor. Givens Price, non-factor, and that's essentially it. Jonathan Rose,
and he hasn't played that well this year.
Kevin Williams.
Okay, and Kevin Williams has been hurt most of the year.
Yeah.
That's
So
who you lose
bad.
defensively.
But then you got to think about you get the Davis twins, who I think are really two good athletes. They're coming off their redshirt freshman year. Those two guys, I think, will make an impact at defensive tackle. So we'll have those two guys. Nebraska defense is going to be good because then that gives them that extra year on defense. They can learn from these guys because they've only had spring practice and then the month of August. And that's it. That's all they had.
But
with this coaching staff.
Can I point out what you lose on the offensive line?
And that's why I said that we lose quite a bit on offense.
Again, Zach Stirrup, Ryan Reeves, Chris Long, Alex Lewis, Chongo Condolo, and Matt Finnan.
But
that's all your experience right there playing the season. That's
and that
gone.
I understand. But you got to think about, we've had guys that have been developing. Tanner Farmer, you have Jalen Barnett, who top offensive lineman out of Oklahoma. Nick Gates, who has come on the scene this year.
My boy Dylan Utter.
Dylan Utter's back, who is a walk-on. So you have some guys that can play at offensive line, and I trust Kavanaugh.
My boy PT Paul Thurston.
Yeah,
he's got some experience
and
too.
this team, I know Nebraska's running team. Well, they haven't run this year, and the offense has still been, fine as far as scoring points in most cases. Illinois is a bad example, but they've managed to score points. And look at what the New England Patriots are doing this season, and their offensive line is garbage.
Yeah,
it's terrible. But when you have and they have the best system in sports, except for maybe like the San Antonio Spurs, the New England Patriots across any sport have like the best system in place in coaching, and that's what I think Mike Riley can institute at Nebraska, and so I don't think that's going to be too big of an issue. And I say I think an undefeated season within the next 3 seasons, if everything goes along according to Mike Riley's plan, next season they could be I really think that the season is an aberration.
Yeah.
Because it's the first year. You're still battling. I mean, don't forget how brainwashed these players were by Bo Pelini.
And we put a lot of pressure on
true.
Mike Riley to come in and win as soon as possible.
Yeah. And they're not that far off from being undefeated.
No, it's a good team.
That? Yeah. Or it's still less than 40 points away from being undefeated.
It's only going to get better. That's the thing.
Less
It's only going to get
20.
better.
Yeah.
It has to be less than
30,
20
yeah.
because Nebraska lost by 2 yesterday.
The 5 losses have been by 13 points.
yeah.
13 total
By
points.
13 points, that's 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I could see Nebraska losing maybe 1 to 2 games next year and then going undefeated. And it doesn't matter who's on their schedule. It won't matter because they will have reached this new point.
Yeah, that's
Just
very true.
be patient. My goodness, when I hear people.
Because just as soon as Nebraska's getting there, teams are going to start falling off.
Right.
So you don't have, that's not a worry. Schedule doesn't matter right now. It matters that Nebraska is going to get better.
Right.
And that no one can say that they're not. If you're saying that they're not, you're cuckoo. Because Nebraska is a good team. They have talent, and they're only going to get better from here on out.
Nebraska takes on Purdue next Saturday on Halloween, 11 a.m. kickoff.
Hopefully we don't get a scare from them.
Just because
it's Halloween.
Devon Kleich, everybody, right there. Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say something I can't remember. But if we're looking at... So let's keep going with this thing. There's obviously not much to talk about with Nebraska and Northwestern. They lost. They couldn't get a 2-point conversion. Huskers lose.
See,
I was not interested in this game at all yesterday.
I've seen a lot of people talk about that 2-point conversion. That wasn't, just because we missed that, was not the end of the world. There was 4 minutes left on the clock.
Exactly.
We had 3 timeouts left. We just could not stop the ball. We could not stop them from getting first downs. And that was the issue.
Exactly. Going on, though, with this thing, I want to go off of what Brent has been saying to wrap up this podcast here. By the way, I'm assuming that the KRNU sports staff is not going to be in West Lafayette, Indiana on Saturday, correct?
No.
Yeah, you're not going to travel over there?
Not
for
all the way to
11 a.m.
Indiana,
matchup?
no.
I mean, I could call it from there for you.
Yeah, hey,
I'll be shooting film at the
do
same
it.
time.
Sure,
but-
yeah. Just have your mic on and you got a bird's eye view.
Yeah, that's
See
true.
everything. You'll be your own spotter.
Live stream it from my camera.
There you
Yeah,
go.
periscope it.
But moving to the 2017 season, that is when, according to Brent and knowing football and knowing how this all works, well, I don't know where I was going with that, but anyways, if Nebraska is going to be that successful program in year number 3 of Mike Riley, it will be 2017. This is the schedule for the Huskers.
Okay.
They host Arkansas State to begin the season.
Win.
They will play at Eugene, Oregon.
Win.
Yep.
Because Oregon right now,
It's
who
fallen.
knows if they will be
Yep,
built
they're
up
on the
by
down.
that time or not.
Well, they would need a coaching change.
Then they host Northern Illinois.
Win.
Yep.
Rutgers,
Win.
who knows what happens in Rutgers in
Because
3 years.
another thing we need to mention at this point, at 2017, there's only 3 non-conference and 9 conference games
That's
now.
right. That's right. Then Illinois,
Win.
possibly. I don't know. Illinois might be building
Win.
upwards. You never know. Wisconsin,
Win.
Ohio State.
That's a coin toss. and it
Those 2
depends-
games are here in Lincoln.
I was going to say, you got to think about those 2 are back-to-back home games for Nebraska.
Yeah, and that is the one. That is the single game that might prevent them from going undefeated, I think, that season. And that just depends on if Urban Meyer's still there. If he's somehow gone, because he might retire. He's getting up there. He looks so stressed out when I watch their game.
And this will only be Nebraska's 3rd game against Ohio State since they joined the Big Ten.
Well, and
right.
just think a couple of years ago, they beat them at home.
They had to come back and do it. Yeah, 2011.
Yeah.
It
Oh, who
was
cares
there.
how you do it? I'm not saying they're gonna steamroll
Oh, hey, I was
everyone.
there,
like
so I remember how it went down.
Yeah, this isn't the 95 team I'm saying they're going to be. I'm just going to say.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is a winnable game. That could be one that they lose.
Then at Purdue,
Win.
Who
Yeah.
knows what happens with Purdue? Northwestern,
Win.
I don't know about that one.
No. You're comparing them now and in seasons past.
Clayton Thorson
we
is
will
still
have
gonna be
never
there
seen a
in
Nebraska
2017.
program like we will see with this new Mike Riley system.
I think that's not a given. It's Northwestern.
it's a win.
The only given game against Northwestern was last year. Every other one has come down to a Hail Mary, a missed field goal, and
2-point
in
conversion, if you wanna
1995,
call
would
it.
you have said that Nebraska would lose to Northwestern?
in 95?
Yeah.
No.
Or any of those seasons when they were running at the peak of Tom Osborne or Bob Devaney's?
No.
tenure? No.
Because
In
we were
95, they said that Nebraska would have a tough time with Florida, and they killed them.
Brent, that was in
I just had to bring that up.
That was a totally different era.
I know. And
completely different
And Mike Riley is
circumstances.
going to be a totally different era.
That's going to be his third year.
Yeah, I know.
Tom Osborne was in his 20th.
Yeah, I know.
In the mid-90s.
I know. That's why I said they're not going to beat people by 50 points a game. I know. I'm just saying, it's a mindset that you have right now, Ryan, because
it's different circumstances.
I know, but it's going to be even more different 2 years from now because you're comparing it to the circumstances right now and in the past with Bo Pelini and in the past with these other teams. It's going to be completely different. People wouldn't have said, you can't predict that Tom Osborne was going to have teams like that. But once he got to that point, was it a surprise? No. You just got to let Mike Riley get to that point. Right. I think he's going to be able to do it more quickly than Tom Osborne is all I'm saying.
I would certainly hope.
That's one of the best teams of all time. I'm not saying they're going to be that good. Right. But I'm just saying they're not going to lose to teams like Northwestern.
But Northwestern is not Northwestern is not Purdue or Rutgers. That's what I'm saying. They're not that level.
But are they better than Nebraska? You think in 2 years that Northwestern is going to be better than Nebraska?
Possibly,
in 2 years?
yeah. They have a freshman quarterback in Clayton Thorson who is doing things this year that are almost comparable to Christian Hackenberg.
It's at home.
Exactly. Nebraska's 1-2 against Northwestern here.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I'm saying. It's like the circumstances.
Well, fair enough.
I know you think Northwestern, you think Nebraska win, but it's for some reason.
No, I know.
Not just against
right now
Northwestern,
it's
years. Not that way.
I know.
It's never that
But I still think they're going to win.
They are
going to have at least one more point at the end of the game than Northwestern is going to have.
Let's certainly hope. Then at Minnesota,
win.
At Penn State,
win.
Christian Hackenberg will no longer be there, and then hosting Iowa.
Win.
So we have potentially 2 question mark games.
I'm not saying they're not going to be close games.
Right.
There could be 6 close games.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
But I'm just saying they're not going to lose them.
2 possible games that could be losses.
Okay, sure.
But everything else...
Well, there's 11 that could be losses.
Well, yes, of course.
But I'm saying games that I would favor Nebraska in, all but maybe Ohio State. Mm-hmm. And I would still favor them just because they're at home.
Of course, yeah. All right. So that's what we think for 2017.
Well, that's what I think. I don't know what you guys think.
That's in the middle of 2015.
I have faith in Mike Riley that other people do not.
No, well, I think it's going to take some time because this
2 years. I know
exactly. Well, no, not just.
And
not
it'll be
just
3 by the time they
for
get
development.
there.
It's going to take time for this fan base to accept that and to understand that they have to move on. That's the problem that this fan base had with Frank Solich. The problem we had with Bo Pelini. And now, right now, in Mike Riley's first year, that problem is still existing.
And
especially with the Nebraska media coverage.
Comes down to because people are butthurt about them firing Bo. This fan base is still split.
Some are still.
It is still split and completely in half.
Let me compare this one more time to Florida. Steve Spurrier, okay, one of the best coaches of all time in college football, won a national championship with Florida. When Urban Meyer came in, you hear people going, well, it's not Steve Spurrier. No, because he was winning again. You forget, the only reason they're comparing is because Nebraska's losing right now. As soon as Mike Riley starts winning these games, they're going to forget all about Bo Pelini, and they're still not going to compare him to someone like Tom Osborne, except for it's like, we've never been this good, except for when Tom Osborne was the coach.
And that's why I am
You're comparing
saying...
them right now. But people will forget that.
Yeah, and that's what I am saying. Nebraska fans, Nebraska media, we all need to drop our expectations right now.
Yes, of
they
course,
all
right
need
now.
to be.
They should have been dropped the past
get
few
rid
years.
of it all.
Yes.
Just get rid of it all. Go to the last 2 home games of the season. Enjoy the atmosphere while you can before we go to Nebraska men's basketball and start enjoying that atmosphere. And then Nebraska baseball. And then we get the summer where we're dying for Husker football again and wishing that things would get going. And then it'll finally come around. And then that's when we can maybe start getting ready to see something major, maybe not. But at this current juncture, throw away your expectations. Drop them.
I agree completely.
And just expect to go into Memorial Stadium and have a great time and a great atmosphere and one of the best atmospheres in college football. I don't care what Ole Miss says or what Texas A&M says. That stadium is the best stadium in this country. Not even better. It's better than Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you it's better than Michigan. 110,000? Yeah, that's pretty darn loud. But it's not like Memorial Stadium.
90,000 sounds like 110,000.
Exactly. Not like Memorial Stadium. So drop your expectations. Go enjoy Memorial Stadium for the last 2 home games of the season. And just try not to get too wrapped up in expecting things. Because you can't do it anymore. We expected Nebraska to beat BYU. They won in a Hail Mary. We expected Nebraska to go clobber Illinois. They lost by 1 in the last 10 seconds of the game. We expected them to go beat Wisconsin. They had the lead. That place was exploding after Andy Janovich's touchdown. And Wisconsin shut everybody up with a game-winning field goal. Don't expect anything anymore. That's my message. Just forget it. Go enjoy the atmosphere. Go enjoy 2 Husker football games. And then move on. Because the season's... It's not done, and I'm not saying quit. I want to make that clear. Do not quit on this season.
No.
Just drop your expectations. There's a huge difference between your expectations for something, dropping them, and quitting. I'm not saying quit. Not in any way, shape, or form.
All I have to say is we got through Callahan era. We can get through this season. Let me tell you, we got through the Callahan era.
Precisely.
It's 5 losses by 15 points.
Less than 15.
Less than 15 points. That's 2 touchdowns away from being undefeated.
Yeah.
That's how good Mike Riley is. Imagine if Bo Pelini had the same team. What were his last 5 losses by before he got fired? Like 150?
You can't even count them.
Like 150 points?
You can't even count them.
Mike Riley's by 15 or less. He's already, yes, I know it's still 5 losses and you didn't win, but goodness, imagine what a different coach would be like at this point. I think that's already showing how good Mike Riley actually is.
Except Justin Fuente. Can I just say that? Look at Justin Fuente at Memphis.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
He's a good coach.
That's amazing.
Jim McElwain's doing the same thing in Florida.
Exactly.
There are other coaches all over. Let's see. Let's compare all the hires from this year, 3 years from now,
That's
and
right.
see where Mike Riley stacks up. I guarantee you he'll be in the top.
I like it. I definitely like it. No home game this weekend, so you don't have to worry about having expectations for that.
Yeah.
Brent and the gang will be back on
Michigan
KRNU.
State.
Primetime football returns in November to Memorial Stadium.
Yeah.
But we'll
They're
discuss
gonna
that.
get clobbered, probably.
Well, who knows? I don't know. Michigan State hasn't been that
I think
solid.
they'll keep it close.
Yeah, you would think. But anyways, we will talk about the Nebraska-Purdue game next week. Hopefully Huskers go in and get a win. And then we will wrap up that game and then discuss Nebraska-Michigan State. That's on next week's podcast. And that's going to do it for this one. For Devon Kleich and Brent Bonfuller, I'm Ryan Swanigan. Drop your expectations. Everybody relax, okay? Just enjoy Husker football to the best of your abilities. And just everybody calm down, okay? Just take it easy. Just take it easy. Just take it easy. Just take it easy. Just take it easy.